Hey guys, I've gotten a couple of requests on doing a tutorial for this, so I'll try and make it quick. I don't really like long videos. So the very first step obviously is we're gonna get some music. um, no, I'm dead serious. That's one of the most important parts. Is, well, whatever puts you into a relaxed / creative state, go ahead and do that. Whether it's music, whether it's grabbing a cup of coffee, whatever it is you need, it's really important. But getting onto canvas here, we're gonna start with a rough sketch. As you can see, I'm no professional. At least I don't think of myself as such. So a lot of my stuff, you'll notice, are just they're pretty dirty and grungy. If you've watched my time lapses, you'll see that whenever I'm drawing someone, I always start with a circle or a spherical of some sort. On here, as you can see, it's barely even a perfect circle, but at the end of the day, I only need what I need. So if that weird oblong or whatever you want to call that shape works for me, I'll use it. At the end of the day, it's not going to be on my final product, so I don't really care. And I think a lot of artists need to be super flexible and super loose during these first stages. So go ahead and make it as dirty as you can. I believe this was the most messed up hand I've ever drawn in my life, and that was because I was trying to conceptualize the hand without the armor, and then I tried sketching like right there, I sketched rough armor on it. Again, this is just the idea phase. The hand, I ended up changing that hand. I made it bigger because I wanted a bigger sword on the back. I give her a scar to just add on to her character, and that's pretty much it. A lot of times I Google references, so right there I was just Googling gauntlets to kind of get an idea of what to do with this. I ended up finding this awesome gauntlet on one of these websites, and this is the one I went for. I went for a gauntlet that had armor plating on the back of the fingers, but at the front it had some kind of leather on it. But I went ahead and pre-sketched that on to what I already had to kind of see how it looked like, and I really liked it. It's really important while drawing armor to be very practical as you can. You can't just cover the whole thing with steel, because it's not really gonna make much sense, and if you're trying to draw something that's at least close to realism, you'll involve some of the practicality that comes with armor. Armor is just not all metal. But with that being done, I was done with the pre-sketch phase, and now it's time to add the line art, or what I like calling the second sketch. For some reason, when I'm drawing and I'm in Discord, someone will be streaming something. I think that was Angel streaming, and I'll just watch the stream for a bit and forget to stop recording, so that's what that was. But yeah, as I was saying, I do two sketches. The first one is the rough sketch. I try to put my idea on paper as soon as I can, and as detailed as I can. Perfection isn't really the key there, because again, I'm just trying to see how this is gonna look like. The second sketch that I usually do, which is what I call I just call it the second sketch. I don't really call it line art, because it doesn't really serve the same purpose as line art, in my opinion. Whenever I'm drawing, Controversy Twins, right, or I'm animating Controversy Twins, or drawing Project Trojan, I'll call that line art because it's literally the line art, the boundaries of the character, and so on and so forth. But when it comes to painting, I just like calling it the second sketch, because what I do with these two is I sandwich the painting between them. So I'll paint over the first sketch for reference, and then I'll take in the second sketch and merge the second sketch with the painting. So that's usually how I do it, and you'll see that later on. we just jumped into stage 3, which is the base color stage. This is where I just put in the colors that I want to use to see how it looks like. I usually change the background color to a shade tone that complements the entire theme that I'm going for. In this case, I wanted her to be standing somewhat inside of a cave, overlooking some light in the back. Those are my favorite shots to do because you can do a lot with the lighting that way. But I turned the background into the main color the background is going to be comprised of, and that kind of helps my brain function better while dealing with colors. Also, the Protronopia doesn't make it easy for me to really conceptualize the color red as well. So doing that kind of helps me figure out the perfect tone to use when it comes to dealing with the color red. But yeah, this is just light colors. That is actually fur that I used a really dark bluish purplish gradient on. Well, not gradient, but base color. A lot of people get confused when I do that because fur is supposed to be white and you'd think the base color for white would be around a light grayish color. But keep in mind, this is a partial indoor scene. So the lighting is obviously going to affect the fur as well. So that's what I'm keeping in account for. In any case, I can build up to it, so it's no biggie. Stage 4 is where I start putting in the dark tones. I usually just grab a sponge brush and I just pretty much dab it all over where I feel is gonna be the areas that are gonna have less light, basically. And then I use a watercolor smudge to kind of fade everything into each other and kind of build the shape. One of the things you'll notice a lot in my paintings is the first shape that I try to establish is the brow ridge and the nose. Once I get these two shapes, then everything else comes easier for me. It might work differently with other artists, but that's what works best for me. So here's where it comes in. It looks really unusual because now I just jumped straight into gray. But again, I'm taking lighting into account, plus I'm also I had an idea of what to do with the fur pre-hand. I basically wanted the fur to be rooted in like dark gray, come out as a pinkish into the white fur that's on the outside. I've never done fur this way before, but I feel like it gives it a lot of depth and an interesting characteristic, so that's what I was going for with this one, and that's why I used the gray gradient. That's just pretty much to establish the root of the fur. As for the hair, of course, I'm gonna be using dreads. Dreads have such an interesting style to it. I think they're my favorite ones to draw. Plus the texture on it is so interesting. But after I've pretty much added the dark tones to everything, as you can see, I didn't even fade out the hair. I just left it as is, and again, it comes back to the texture of the hair. But yeah, light tones, pretty self-explanatory. Since she's black, I really love working with black skin because it's different from regular in the sense that when you're painting dark skin, it's less so of the light hitting it, but more so of the reflection. So when I was painting this, I wasn't really thinking, oh, what does black skin color look like when it's when it's lit from this side or that side. Instead, I'm thinking of, okay, what color is the light hitting the skin? Is it purple? Is it bright blue? What color is it? And then I map that onto the skin, and that's exactly what I'm doing here. I do jump back and forth between dark tones and the light tones to kind of balance them out as well, and that's something that I feel all artists do, or should do at least, is once you're done with the previous step, it's, you know, you can always go back and make some adjustments. Don't just keep going forward. If you see something's wrong, go back and fix it. A lot of people don't do that. But yeah, here is where I was pretty much now coming into the dark purple to kind of show those lines that you see on there are basically the roots and how the fur is kind of popping out. If you think about it from a 3D perspective, those dark sections are actually deeper than the light ones, because that's where the fur is coming from. That will be better implied once I start doing the highlights. But again, I go back to the dark tones to kind of add more depth wherever it's needed. Over here I'm just working on some of the steel artifacts and accessories. I wanted to go with gold for this, or for those rings, as well as the rings on the dreads, but I ended up not doing it just because my main theme for this art piece that I wanted to stick to was red and blue. If you look at this piece and even the final piece, you'll notice that it's strictly just red and blue. Even the steel is just a very desaturated blue. And the reason I decided on that just goes back to the whole, you know, color theory. I've read a couple of books on that, and it's really interesting how it plays in psychologically with how people perceive things. So I figured the best way to really push the visuals on this art piece was to stick to those two colors, and do my very best in making them pop accordingly. So that's why I didn't go with gold for those rings, because gold would have introduced a very bright foreign color, which is yellow, and now I would have yellow, red, and blue. So I figured, nah, I won't do that. I'll just do the silver. That way I can just use the same desaturated blue that I used for the armor right by the hand, and the rest of the painting. Step by step, I just keep going. If you take a closer look at that second sketch or line art, you'll see that I had sketched some edges on her. I ended up not giving her those stylized edges, the popular ones. Because she's supposed to be a Red Guard Viking of sorts, so obviously that wouldn't match the date period. I believe those edges became fashion just recently, so I decided not to go with those anymore and just keep it natural. Next we're going to do the eyes. Eyes are one of the things that I like doing last, simply because I don't know, for some reason eyes popping up at the very end of the process makes it so much satisfying. And eyebrows. I did simple eyebrows this time. I didn't do highlights, I didn't do shading on it. I just left it as is, just because I wanted them to be matte. I just wanted them to be there for aesthetic looks. So I figured I'd leave it at this. Scar. I don't think I've ever worked on this level of detail with a scar before. This is my very first time. If you're super professional and know all about scars, I would really like some advice on this. I don't think I used reference for scars for this one, which I should have. I know better. But there's success and failure, so A simple mouth. I really didn't care about so much detail on the mouth because I was gonna highlight it and have it reflect some foreground light. So I really didn't care about much detail when it came to the mouth. But yeah. And finally, the highlights. This is pretty much where the fur is actually going to pop out, as you'll see here. I used a mixture of color dodging and overlay to kind of give it that effect that I was going for. It turned out exactly how I imagined it, so I'm super happy about that. But as you can see now, how the fur is like split right there on the dark tones that I put earlier, to kind of imply how it's coming out in like a 3D. This is also the first time I've worked with fur before. I've seen other artists work with it, but I've never really looked at a tutorial or anything. I just used the concepts that they were using and merged them together. I didn't use reference for this one. Again, I should have, but I don't think it came out too bad. It came out exactly how I pictured it in my head, so that was a good thing. But I'll definitely be doing more fur as it goes. The decision on that steel hand was very split. It was split back and forth because I wanted to do heavy brush steel, but then again I didn't want to do it, but then again I wanted to do it. So the whole decision on that kind of sat in between, because the very palm part right below the thumb, that chunky part, is super brush, but the rest isn't. And here is one of my favorite steps, is where I merge the second line art to the painting. As you can see to the left there, you can see some scribbles. That's from the first line art. It's still on there. I keep that on there for as long as I can, to make sure that I have everything in place and the paint is hitting everywhere that I need it to, especially the base. Right there, I realized that my line art was not complementing the background at all. So my line art was super light, and I had to drop it a little bit. So I just used curves and made it a shade darker. It was once you have that nose and brow ridge defined, then this step is going to be super easy because you know where everything's at and it just works out perfectly. Again, music is super important. If you're wondering why I haven't put the silver rings on the dreads yet, it's because I wasn't 100% sure on. It's gonna sound ridiculous, but I didn't know what was in front of her at this point. All I knew about what was on her foreground was that there was some light on her foreground, and some dark objects, which is all I need to do, brush steel, because it doesn't have that much detail, so it's just like whatever. But I didn't do that because I didn't know it was in front of her, and for the reflection it's super important, so I did that later. Yes, you saw that correctly. The very final step of the process is in fact the signature. To me, this is an important part just because it's I don't put signatures on my art pieces until I'm 100% sure that I'm fully done, and that I will not be putting anything else on it or making any adjustments. So putting a signature essentially just finalizes it all, and it makes me acknowledge the work that I've done, and it reminds me that, you know, this is where you declared your art complete. So look back and see some of your mistakes. Look back, see some of the challenges you had. Look back and just see the amazing work that you've done and be proud of it. Again, I don't consider myself a professional, but whenever I put that signature on my stuff, I'm declaring to myself and everyone else that I'm proud of it, and it's a step to becoming better. So this was Dh'emka, the warrior, Red Guard Viking, new original character for you guys. Thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye bye.